Hey there, welcome to Alyssa Jane's first discussion on What If. We're going to be discussing What If Season 1, Episode 1. What if Peggy Carter were the first Avenger? And with me today to talk about that, we have Corrie Shoemaker. Captain Corrie is here. And
Thank
we
you for
have
having me.
Yes, no problem. Thank you for being here. And we have alternate Marc. I don't know how that's related to variant Marc or what other Marks there are, but
So many marks.
It's different than Mike from the parallel universe, but yeah.
Oh, okay. And Marc will be here with me every week, and so welcome, Marc.
Yeah, no, good to be here. Good to be talking about this show. So excited about this show. I've been waiting forever for it. So
Yeah, I know. You and I have been waiting for this show for a while.
I mean, do you remember we used to love these comics when we were kids? I remember. This is
oh yes, I remember.
Yeah.
I do remember. So there was when I first started getting into comics, they only had the What If that had come out in the 70s, so I would get the back issues. I mean, this is like in the 80s, the late 80s at this point. And then they announced they're coming out with a new version of What If, and I was like, yes, oh my god! And then, and I don't know, like I lost track of it. I don't know how many different iterations of What If there have been since then, but yes, I do remember specifically the What If Wolverine killed the Hulk was.
Oh yes, yeah, I remember that one.
That was like the big famous one. And I do remember a what if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four and they all had fives on their jerseys.
Right, I forgot about that. The one I remember the most is what if the X-Men lost Inferno? Because I remember that.
Oh yeah.
And it was like starring Doctor Strange. And at the moment, when I was a kid, I hated Doctor Strange. It's like, oh, Doctor Strange, but it was pretty.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the episode. I want to start with everybody's overall feelings, overall thoughts on this episode. Why don't we start with Corrie? Because I know that you were super excited. You specifically requested to be on for this episode. I know you're a fan of Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so what did you think of this episode?
I was kind of divided because I loved that we actually got to see a what if for Peggy taking a leading role. I mean, not that she didn't have a leading role in Agent Carter, she did, but this kind of gave her the superhero package. It's like she got the superhero upgrade that she didn't really need in any of the other shows. So that was really neat. And to see what she could do when she was given these tools like super strength. And I love that, just like Steve, it was her personality, who she was, that really made her special. Like how she tells Steve, it's the man in the suit that makes the Hydra Stomper. Similar with Peggy, it's really who she is and what she's had to fight through that makes her a great candidate for Captain Carter. But we see a lot of the same things, the same sort of misogyny and like lack of belief in her. Even when she's given the super soldier serum, she's told, I was promised peace and, a super soldier, and all I got was a girl, which is the same thing that they tell Steve, just with a different nomiker, right? Of, I was expecting a super soldier and all I got was you. So yeah, to wrap up, it was a very interesting show. I enjoyed it. It just made me think, this is great, but Agent Carter was better. So that was, all the things that were great about this, not a one shot, but this episode were tenfold in the Agent Carter series. And so, I don't know, when everyone's getting all excited about this series coming out, I keep thinking, well, if you had been watching the shows a couple of years ago, you would have gotten this and more of it for 2 seasons. But nobody's really I guess the following wasn't as strong. And even in the Time magazine, like my dad picked up the Time magazine on the history of Marvel, and they have a section on Marvel TV as like the next step for Marvel and stage 4. And there's one sentence referencing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter and like Daredevil and all the other ones. And then it's like, but now we're jumping into TV. And then there's a whole section and everything that's coming. And I'm going, really? The whole history of Marvel in this magazine, starting from the beginning, you give Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter one sentence. Oh, you're muted. Alyssa, you're muted.
I'm muted. Thank you.
There you go.
I was going to say, unfortunately, all of those shows have been left behind. All of the Netflix shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent of Carter, are not canon in the MCU. They're not a part of the MCU. Although there's rumors that like Daredevil's going to pop in there. They might be able to work in some of this stuff from the multiverse. There have been a lot of rumors that Daredevil might show up the same actor and everything from the Netflix show, and that Kingpin with the same actor might show up in the Spider-Man film or in the Multiverse of Madness, and so they could work in some of that stuff through the multiverse. But I think they're kind of leaving behind Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, we have in Agent. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but in Agent Carter, we have Sousa, who's supposed to be canon, shows up. So I know there was some discussion in the Time magazine that maybe Carter might be canon because of what happens at the end of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
But it's kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I want to go to Mark, but first I want to say hello to people in the chat. Rob from Smirking Gun Reviews is here. So I was super surprised at how much I love the animation. I actually like the animation too. But I'll save that for when I talk about my overall thoughts. And Deborah, hello. Say hello. Sorry to drop in late. Actually, you're not really that late. We were about 15 minutes late getting started. So we're just getting started. So you're actually not all that late. So hello. All right, Mark, what were your overall thoughts of this episode?
Well, as I was saying, I was like really, really looking forward to What If. However, we're just talking about all the different what ifs, like what if they lost this, and what if and then there was the one that you mentioned, what if like Spider-Man was Fantastic Four. So the what if this person was this person instead of that person, I'm actually was least excited for, and I knew that the first 2 episodes we're gonna be that what if this person was actually this person, and I still like it. It's just not what I'm like really amped for. Like I've heard like some little tidbits of episode 3 that's got me really excited, but the what if this person is that person, that's kind of, so I wasn't going in expecting all that much. But after watching this episode, I gotta say, it does make me want to watch the Agent Carter show, especially hearing you saying that was actually much better than this episode, which I frankly could see. I could see a show about her easily being better than this episode, because this episode, it's not bad. It's a good episode, but it's basically, it's just a retelling of Captain America: The First Avenger. And it kind of annoyed me that things happen in a different way, but they find, even though it's Captain Carter instead of Captain America, they still pretty much the same basic things happen and that happened in that movie. Like they just get to a different way. Like they arrive at the same destination, but from a different route, which I was hoping they would just splinter off entirely. However, I think what has me most excited about this episode is because I love the character of Captain Carter and the stuff that you mentioned, how they portrayed how she was received and how she, proved herself and all that. That's really interesting to me. So the thing that's got me most excited about this episode is them using this as a jumping off point into the future. And because I to me, it's interesting for me to speculate, like, even though they arrived pretty much at the same destination, like the ending was very similar to First Avenger and all the other things. It did get there a bit faster because this is only a half-hour episode, but they pretty much arrived at the same place. But what I'm most excited about is thinking the changes that were made in this episode, how that will domino into the future, which is what has me mostly. So if this was just a one-off and this is all we get, I would be like, eh. But since, if I think of it as like the first episode or the first part of the story that's going to be ongoing, and then things are just going to domino from here. There was like a big one, but I can't remember of something that might affect, like, make the whole Avengers timeline completely wonky compared to it. So that's got me excited. So as the first episode, it was decent. It was basically, this is just a different version of First Avenger, but as first episode of introduction of this character, that there's hints. Some people are speculating that she may even appear in the Doctor Strange movie, which I would love personally, in live action. But yeah, so if they continue on with this character, and this is like the introduction, that's awesome. Like, more Peggy Carter in the MCU, I'm all for. So
more Peggy Carter all the time. I mean, I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, every indication is that she will be back. I don't remember if I said this on air or off air, but we were talking about how there's a scene in the trailer where you see her talking to Doctor Strange. Or you don't see her face, but you see somebody with her shield. So it's clearly her. And that's for an episode this season. Also, so there was a shot in one of the trailers or somewhere where they're kind of recreating the scene in the original Avengers film when they're all in New York City and they're all like facing back to back, all the Avengers. And I don't remember where I saw it, but there's a scene that has different people from these different episodes in their place. So like the T'Challa Star-Lord from next week, and it's Captain Carter. And I actually have a list of all of the episodes this season. And it looks reliable. And the last one, we're now only having 9 episodes instead of 10. I guess they're kicking one episode back to season 2. But episode 9, it says it's about Ultron, Vision, Infinity Stones, and Guardians of the Multiverse. So I think Guardians of the Multiverse might be like people from the different episodes. So that sounds pretty amazing. And I also did hear, too, that the rumors, it's not confirmed, but that there may be a live-action Captain Carter in the Multiverse of Madness. But we don't know. But I do think it's a good bet we will see her again in some capacity. It looks like this season in What If, and probably in future seasons as well.
See, what Mark said about, how is this going to have a domino effect with the future? My immediate thought was, okay, yeah, the episode was great, but what happens to Steve? Because we have a flip of what happens. We know when Steve died that Peggy went on and founded the SSR. She started S.H.I.E.L.D. She did like all these crazy things, became this great agent. So I'm like, okay, what's Steve going to do? Like, what about her death and her sacrifice is going to fuel him to greatness, and where is he going to end up? Like, are we going to get a kind of Iron Man based on the first suit that he has? Like, that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and what's Bucky going to do? Because he's not going to be the Winter Soldier now. Like, he's just going to be regular old Bucky. So maybe him and Steve will help found S.H.I.E.L.D., or who knows? I would like. I'm assuming like there would be some sort of follow up to that in season 2. Like, I'm curious about that as well.
I just remembered like the big difference I was wondering about. What I would love to see is in this universe how Captain America Winter Soldier plays out, because Bucky Barnes doesn't get turned into a Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Unless something happens that furthers that. Maybe they could have Steve Rogers be the Winter Soldier.
Well, I actually thought we're getting ahead of what I was going to talk about, what order I was going to go into, but I actually thought when initially in the train scene, I thought he might actually be dead because it's a alternate universe, so anybody can die. And I was like, or not dead, but like he's going to end up being the Winter Soldier instead of Bucky. But then that doesn't look like that's where it's headed. So,
and the other question I have is: would Hydra infiltrate Shield the same way they did in the real universe?
All kinds of questions.
Yeah.
So many questions.
Because that one dude was like who like did it. That the scientist dude. He's actually still in custody, which I believe wasn't the case in the First Avenger.
Yeah.
Was it Arnim Zola?
Zola. Yeah, he ends up coming back in the computer and was that Winter Soldier? Yeah,
that was Winter Soldier. Yeah,
and I think it's in Agents of Shield. I think it is that we see a little bit more of him in his story, and he ends up teaming up in Agent Carter. He's put in prison with the villain that they capture in Agent Carter, and the two of them start plotting Hydra stuff together.
Right.
So, there's so much that is exciting.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I still haven't really given my thoughts of the episode yet either. So
go ahead.
Let's get into that. I didn't, like Mark, I didn't really have like high expectations for this. And I hear you about this person was that person kind of thing. I was thinking more on the lines of I knew that this would be playing off of Captain America First Avenger, and that's not one of my favorite films. Like, I don't hate it or anything, but it's not one I get excited about. And so to do a parody, or not a parody, but like a version of a film that I never thought was all that amazing to begin with was not anything that I was ever excited about. So my expectations coming in were very in check. So it met those expectations. It was good. I really enjoyed myself. And I have heard from, some of the YouTube channels I watch, there are people who they got the press access to the first 3 episodes. And they all say that with each succeeding episode, it gets more and more like deviated. Whereas the first one really just kind of follows the formula of the First Avenger, like you were kind of talking about, Mark. But it sounds like as we get into more episodes, they're going to start moving away from that. And having heard that, like, makes me feel better about it, because if it was like every episode was just a movie but slightly different, I would get bored. But having heard from people who have seen the first 3 episodes that it's going to start moving away from that, then I'm like, okay, well, that's good. I mean, I think it almost makes sense to have this be the first episode and have this be the one that you're playing it closest to the vest, like you're closest to what actually happens, to kind of dip your toes into the world of what if, and just kind of introduce you to the multiverse by starting off with something that's pretty close to what we're familiar with, and then gradually like getting more and more out there, which is what I hope that they're going to do. So if that's where they're headed, then I am totally content with this as kind of an introduction to what if. If like it doesn't get any better than this throughout the series, I would consider it the season a big disappointment. But all indications are that it will. So with that knowledge, I feel pretty good about this as a first episode. One of the things that I wrote in my notes that I really appreciated was how I like the Steve and Peggy love story, how that still worked the same. And I like how Steve is he's such a good guy, and it's such within his character too. He's not like upset that Peggy got the super soldier serum instead of him. He's not jealous. He's like her biggest supporter. And that's very much within his character. So I enjoyed that. I kind of enjoyed that their relationship was playing out very similarly, but reversed. I enjoyed a lot about this episode, but there were a lot of things that, I just didn't have high expectations coming in. So it was good. It played out to my expectations.
Yeah, I liked that even when Steve, like the one opportunity he had to be what he'd wanted to be all his life is taken away from him because he's shot, and Peggy takes the serum, and he's not bitter about it. He's not, all he's interested in is, oh, what was it like? And wow, like it's amazing what you can do, and that's great. And you're the next superhero now. Like he's just her cheerleader the whole way, which I loved. I thought that was so sweet. And as you said, so much in sticking with his character that, he would just be like, okay, well, my job is to just cheer her on and support her because, he has all the head knowledge of the program because he was all ready to go through it. I mean, she knows the background of it because she was working with the program. I also thought it was interesting they had that scene where it looks almost like he's doing physio, where they're in the gym and he's holding on to those 2 bars and walking, which is like a common setup for people who are learning how to walk after like some kind of spinal damage.
Yeah, Rhodey did it in which movie was Civil War when he got injured, when James Rhodes got injured. He was on it looked almost like the same scene because he was on that same kind of thing to help him walk again.
With the physiotherapy. So that was kind of interesting. I'm like, well, how badly was he injured? And you also get through the dialogue that kind of, I can do this all day, but it's reinterpreted as it's okay. Like I'll hang in there. I'll hang, like every time he's shot or like beat down and everyone's worried if he's okay. He's like, it's all right. Go do what you have to do. I'll still be here. Which I thought was sweet.
All right, I want to jump in the chat. Let's see. Rob was saying the series poses so many more questions in a single episode, and with an audience that is used to things paying off, I wonder how this series will evolve, or will it just move on from those side stories? Yeah, I think, as I was talking about, I think it will evolve hopefully, from what the first episode was. And he says, I'm surprised Disney let people have access to the episodes when they have been playing things close to the vest for other series. For the other series, they did let people have access to at least the first 2. I watch a lot of YouTube channels where the people who are on the channels like actually have press access or whatever, so they always get the whatever episodes they forward to the press, like they always get them. And so for every series, there's always been at least the first 2 or 3 that have been given out to them. So this one is no different than that. And Brandon Howes is here, the artist formerly known as Cardinal Doomsday. Hello, Brandon. Welcome. Always count on you to join us in the chat. So I wanted to go through the episode, but there were some things I wanted to just... I made a list of some of the quotes in the episode that kind of reference our main timeline that I thought were kind of cool. Actually, there's one of them that I didn't really like, which I'll talk about too. And then I think Corey might have some too. So there's Steve, when he's in the Iron Man suit, he says, let's hear it for Captain Carter, which is exactly what Bucky says for him. Let's hear it for Captain America after he rescues them. And then the one that it's pretty obvious that everybody's talking about is how Peggy saves Bucky on the train from falling, and he says, you almost pulled my arm off. And of course it's the arm that he ends up losing. And there's one that I saw in another YouTube video. I didn't pick up on it, but when it did seem familiar to me, but I couldn't place where it was from. When Peggy's like, who needs a plan? I have a shield. That I was like, why is that familiar? Yeah. That was of the reverse. There was a Stark and a Captain, but it was the reverse roles. It was Captain America and Tony Stark in, I think it was the first Avengers film, where Tony is the one saying who needs a plan. But it was very similar dialogue. And then the one that I didn't like as much is when Steve and Peggy were talking, and Steve was like, oh, well, it could be worse. They could like make you dress up in a silly costume and go on a USO tour. And I was like, that seems oddly specific. Like, I don't know. It almost made me stop and think, like, wait, in the film, that happened after he got the super soldier serum, right? So that didn't happen to him already, because it almost seemed like it had already happened to him because it was so oddly specific. That one was a little bit too far for me. But the other ones I did like, and there's one that I caught that no other YouTube video that I watched picked up on it. So it made me think that I was going crazy. But in the scene where they rescue Steve and he powers up the suit, and then immediately the suit falls over. Shortly after that, Bucky's like, "Are you okay?" Whatever. And then Steve gets up, and Bucky's like, "Come on, Steve, we don't have all day." And that just made me think about how he always says, "I could do this all day." So that's,
I caught that when I was watching the episode too. Yeah. That was actually the one that stood out to me the most, actually.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Nobody else, all the YouTube videos I watch, nobody else pointed that out. They all have, these are 50 Easter eggs you didn't pick up on. And like, nobody pointed that one out. Did you guys have any other ones any other similarities to the Prime timeline?
I had a few that I picked up on. There's the line where the commander says, "I was promised an army. Instead, I get a girl," which is a deviation of with Steve. He's like, "I was promised an army of super soldiers, and all I got was you," right? And then they're using, I guess, Peggy and Steve as a pincushion to do all the blood research and whatnot. They're like, "Be grateful you're here and not being brought up on charges of subordination." I mean, that kind of line was kicked around a lot in Agent Carter, like, "Be thankful you're even in the room" type thing.
Yeah.
But I like that they also referenced it within the episode, because later she says that to the colonel who's supposed to be running the SSR, like, just be grateful you're in the room now that she's running things. So that was cool. What else? Oh, the scene where the drinking scene that Steve has, where he says he can't get drunk and he's so upset over Bucky's death. They changed that quite a bit, because in this episode, Peggy's drinking because she's upset that she can't go on a retrieval mission for the Tesseract. And so it's not because someone has died, it's because she's being not allowed to go and use her powers, and she's being shut down, or her ideas are being shut down. And it's interesting that it's Howard that sort of slides up beside her and is like, "Hey, I got something for you. It's a new suit and everything." Whereas in the original movie, it was actually Peggy who was encouraging Steve about the death of Bucky. So we end up having Howard as kind of another sort of support, friend in the situation for Captain Carter. Whereas we would have had, Bucky and Peggy in that role in the original. So that was kind of cool. And the box that he passes to her, it has Howard's designer clothing, which to me was like, that could be a joke on Harrods in London.
Oh.
But so now he's doing designer clothing. But it's like the suit for her, right? And
I didn't even catch that at all. Yeah.
I had to go back and pause it a million times to catch it, so it wasn't a blur, but it's Howard's designer clothing.
That's funny.
Which is great. And then I think the last one I talked about was at the very end when Peggy shows up out of the portal and Fury says, "Ma'am, could you please put the shield and sword down?" which is a direct callback to Avengers when Loki shows up and he's like, "Sir, can you put the spear down?"
Yeah, I almost feel like it doesn't make sense for him to do that to Captain Carter, but like like they wanted to do an intentional callback to that.
Right.
But
and when there's a line where Steve says, "I owe you one," and he takes her hand. That's a reference to Captain America: Winter Soldier, where Natasha says, "I owe you one," and then Steve says, "No, you don't," and then she says, "Be honest with me. If it was up to you and my life, or your life was on the line, would you trust me to save you?" And he replies, like, "I would now."
Oh, so, yeah, cool. I didn't even
slight reference to that Natasha Steve moment, but now we have a Steve and Peggy moment. That's all I had.
You made me think of another one with the drinking. I thought you were going to say how both Steve and Peggy talk about how the whiskey doesn't really do anything to them anymore.
Yeah.
That when he was drinking, that's what he said, and then she said that in this in this show.
And Howard's mad because he's supposed to be the sciencey smart one, but Peggy knows science too. He's like, "Hey, I'm the person who's good at this."
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. I think that's everything.
Mark, do you have anything to add?
Oh, he says he's not much of a dancer. Sorry, that's the last one.
Well, I mean, there was the whole thing of dancing. Like, that was the obvious one. Where, we got to teach you dance. I got to show you how to dance. It was, call back to the first movie. But other than that, no, I actually wasn't, like, paying attention, looking out for this sort of thing. So I should have took notes. It's funny because the one about, we don't have all day, that's the one that jumped out. That made me notice.
I'm glad somebody else caught on that. I was beginning to think I was crazy. Like, nobody else is pointing that out. All right, I had a list of things I wanted to talk about through the episode, some of which we've already touched on. So I might skip around what I have here in my notes because we've already talked about some of these things. I wanted to talk about the beginning and the Watcher narration and the point of deviation, because this is a thing that I think works well in the first episode, but I was hoping, okay, they're just doing that in the first episode. They're not always going to do that. So like when Peggy Carter, says, they ask her, aren't you going to go upstairs? And she goes, no, I think I'll stay down here. And you hear the Watcher go, there. That's where it changes. And I'm like, well, I hope they don't do that every episode. I think they probably, because this is kind of the pilot, this is the introduction to What If that they were doing that way. But one of the videos I saw pointed out that actually isn't the first change, that Steve and Peggy have a whole conversation that doesn't exist in the movie before that. And then the reason why in the film, Steve is already on the table when they ask her that question. So that could be a reason why she chose to stay, because she was there right next to him and they smile at each other. And she's like, no, I'll stay. But in the film, he was already lying down on the table getting prepped for the super soldier serum at that point. So there's not really an explanation as to why that was different. But I don't know. I'm looking at my notes here. But when they did that deviation thing, it kind of made the point how everything can change with just one decision and all of that, and just hope that they don't. They let us figure it out from now on. We don't have to always go to that and be just on the nose like that. There are other things that I'll get to a little bit later that I thought were oddly different. But Mark, what did you think about that whole scene there?
I mean, the whole thing with the Watcher at the start, I was actually hoping for a bit more on the Watcher and a bit more about, like, sort of introducing who they are. But I hope they'll get more into that later on, because I remember really liking the Watchers. I mean, I think that he had a line of something like, I watch and never interfere. Like, that's something I could really get into. And I can't wait until they reveal that the Watcher is actually a host. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of it. No, but anyway, he's perfect. Like, Jeffrey Wright was the perfect.
Oh, it took me a second to figure out what you were talking about. Oh, Jeffrey Wright, Westworld, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, he was the perfect. I think he was the perfect choice for the Watch, and I want to see more of him, frankly. And I agree with what you said about we don't need that every episode where he goes there. That's where things change. I agree. I hope that's just like the pilot episode to get people into it and interested in it. But Yeah, and I wouldn't mind some more narration from the Watchers, to be honest, or more into them. Some people are speculating, ooh, they say they never interfere, but maybe we'll see them interfere. I think it would be too early to do that.
Yeah.
But in season 1, but maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I would like to see more of it, and I did like it, yes.
Yeah, Corrie, any thoughts?
I mean, I just assumed that was kind of the framework in which we were functioning, whether or not that's going to happen first episode and last episode or every episode. To me, it was just bookending the story and explaining, especially for someone who's not familiar with this comic series very much.
Yeah.
It helped me to be like, okay, here's where we are and here's where we're going. This is what kind of the synopsis is. So now I'm prepared for what's going to happen next. But I really liked the voice acting. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, but I know Rob mentioned that like Dominic Cooper brought his A game to the performance of Howard Stark, and like, he plays Howard Stark and Agent Carter, and the tonality and like even the expressions are perfect. And so I just liked seeing or hearing these voices. It was kind of weird for me to see them put to an animation.
Yeah.
It looked almost like they had taken a film and then put it through like a phone app to animate it. Not like a old style Disney animation. Very, very unique.
Yeah. Yeah, the voice acting, I was going to talk a little bit more of that as we went too, but yeah, I thought it was very good too. And again, I don't remember if we were talking about this before we went live or after, but we were talking about how Steve is not voiced by Chris Evans, but whoever is doing that he's doing a really great impersonation of Chris Evans.
He's voiced by Josh Keaton.
Josh Keaton, yes.
Yeah, and then Colonel Chester Phillips, who was Tommy Lee Jones in the original film, is replaced by Colonel John Flynn, played by Bradley Whitford. And he was in the Agent Carter one-shot.
Yeah, let's talk about... Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, they had the Tommy Lee Jones character, but they killed him off right away.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Like, obviously they couldn't get Tommy Lee Jones to do the voice, but I was wondering, like, why would they not just be able to get somebody to impersonate Tommy Lee Jones? Or is there some sort of legal thing where Tommy Lee Jones has to give them their permission or something to use his likeness? Yeah. Or because they went out of their way to not give him any lines and just kill him immediately and make sure, like, it's very blink and you'll miss it. Like, I actually didn't even notice him until I went back and watched these other YouTube videos. Like, oh yeah, they killed Tommy Lee Jones immediately. Because I was just like, what happened to Tommy Lee Jones? But
well, on the subject of voice actors, I also wanted to bring up the Red Skull voice actor.
Yes,
obviously they didn't get Hugo Weaving.
They got the guy who
was it the same guy from
Infinity War
and
Endgame, and I wrote his name down. It is Roscoe Marquand, Marquand. I don't know how you pronounce that.
Because that's the guy. I remember when I saw Infinity War, I couldn't tell whether or not it was Hugo Weaving, but I assumed it wasn't because I didn't think he'd come back. And but he was playing it kind of similar to Hugo Weaving. But in this episode, I think even more so than Infinity War and Endgame, he was doing like an grade A like Hugo Weaving impression. Like I could tell it was like going hard out to sound exactly like Hugo Weaving. And I think he did a good job actually. Like if I didn't intellectually know it wasn't Hugo Weaving, I might be able to fall for it and think that it was, because he has a very distinct sound.
Yeah. Well, I'm jumping into the chat. D's reviews. Darren is here. Hey, Darren. And Darren says that he is from The Walking Dead.
Who do you play in The Walking Dead? I'd be interested to know that.
Aaron. He plays Aaron in The Walking Dead.
Aaron! Oh, the guy who plays Aaron. Okay, right. Yeah, no, I can see him doing that.
Yeah. But yeah, I am Walking Dead is a blind spot to me, so I've never seen it, and Mark has always told me don't bother, so I have not. But but it is the guy who does the Red Skull in the films after he takes over for Hugo Weaving in the Infinity War and Endgame.
I know I looked at an article someone had written on why the changeover from Colonel Chester Phillips to John Flynn, and they had mentioned that it goes better with the storyline for Peggy because Chester Phillips, at least he kind of gave her a chance, and then at the end really started to believe in her or at least support her, whereas the guy in the What If show is very contrary to everything Peggy's doing, so he's a better antagonist to kind of push her towards greatness, like Loki in the Loki show, right? You're here to cause problems so the heroes can rise. So I don't know if that's of any help, but that's all I could find online.
Yeah, and that guy was nasty. Like, he was worse than Tommy Lee Jones was to Steve. And I found it very satisfying at the end when she flips his line back on him, where he was always like, "You're lucky you're even in the room." And then at the end where she's like, "You're lucky you're in the room right now." And I loved that. I mean, I felt that very satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, too, speaking of things that I found satisfying, it's another interesting deviation to me was that they got to the Tesseract a little earlier because she went out a little bit earlier. But I loved the scene, the initial scene where she starts discovering her powers and she's beating the crap out of all these dudes. And when she first throws that truck over her head when she first started, she's like, "That was brilliant!" Like, I thought that was great.
Do you see what's happening? Like, yes, Peggy, we do.
Yeah, that was, I loved how excited she was that she was able to do all these things, and I love the scene where the big guy comes in. He was like, "Oh, you are a delicate flower," and she just beats the crap out of him and in like 5 seconds. But
fragile frying.
Right, yeah. Also, I really love that scene. And it's interesting that, she was ahead of Steve. Like, she gets the Tesseract way earlier, which leads to something else that I wanted to talk about. But I wanted to see if you guys had anything else to say on this scene before we move on.
That was the only scene that I really didn't like. I think because it became so cartoony. Yeah. That her, like, I loved all the whole, like, the fight scene, and it was very balletic, and I loved how she could just jump over buildings, and I'm like, it's so natural and smooth for her. That's great. But when that guy says, like, "Oh, you're fragile, Fräulein," and then she punches him, and it's almost like you see, like, the slow-mo of his cheek going and his teeth flying out, and then he get hits in the stomach, and I'm like, okay, this is starting to look like, Animaniacs or Tiny Toons or something, and less of a more serious, I don't know, as serious as a cartoon can be.
Yeah. She punched him in the knee first and knocked him down, and then she did the slow motion, like.
Yeah. So that was the only time when I was kind of taken out of the world and like, that's getting a little bit cartoony.
Yeah, no, I didn't even notice. I enjoyed it.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. It's definitely maybe a bit more goofy than everything else. But I don't know. I personally always thought that First Avenger was always kind of had that goofy style to it. But maybe this was a bit more. But it didn't really bother me either.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to talk about the Tesseract, and here I ended up making peace with this and just deciding to suspend my disbelief. But at first it was like, okay, how did he build the Iron Man suit so quickly? And he has, in the Prime universe, he has the Tesseract for 20, 30 years and never builds an Iron Man suit, but here he does it in like 5 minutes. And then why would Steve be the one who gets to go in it? Like, would he really be, capable of piloting that thing? Is he really qualified? But it seemed more like a thing that was like, well, we have to, from a writer's perspective of the show, we got to have Steve Rogers still be a hero. So let's put Steve in the suit, even though in world, I don't know how much sense it makes for Steve to be in the suit. And it was a little jarring for me when I first saw it. I was like, how did he do that so quickly? Ultimately, I decided, you know what, it's fun. It's cool to see Steve also be hero and be involved. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll suspend disbelief for it. But at first I was just like, I don't know about this. So I don't know. What did you think about that, Mark?
Well, I can tell you exactly why, how he was able to build the Iron Man suit and how Steve Rogers, why he was able to pilot it so the show could happen.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, I agree. I maybe a tinge in the back of my eye. I was like, how realistic is this? But then I was just like, who cares? Let's just enjoy with it and suspend disbelief and go with it.
That's ultimately where I came to too.
Yeah,
I was just like, okay, fine, I'll go along with it.
I was like, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was slightly confused because at first I thought that they had access to like a Hydra drone or something. Like, I didn't think that Howard had built that. I thought that was actually a Hydra like robot. And I'm like, oh, has Hydra already started building robotics? And that Howard was just using the Tesseract to power it and to like tweak with it and make it specifically for Steve. Or he just made it in a week because he's awesome. Or we're having a montage, like time is going faster than we are aware of. So, but Rob says he loves Steve riding her like the Iron Giant when they're flying through the air.
Well, yeah, I wanted to point that out because I actually, when I was watching this show, even though I've never seen the movie The Iron Giant, I still got a lot of Iron Giant vibes from that. I think they were definitely trying to, invoke that same visual style or invoke that images.
Yeah.
Although I gotta say, I love like what they did is they had that old-fashioned 1940s music playing during all these fight scenes, and that's exactly what they do in Agent Carter. Like as soon as a fight breaks out, it's like it's a good day for her, and she's like punching guys through the window, and it's so happy, and everybody's getting their teeth knocked out.
They did in the film too, I believe, right? In First Avenger, I feel like they were doing that, playing 40s music.
Yeah, I feel like I know they had that montage to everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
and the music was Bugle Call Rag by Benny Goodman for that scene, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Visually, the suit actually, I didn't think of the Iron Giant because that's just off my radar. I've never seen that movie, and visually, what the suit actually reminded me of is like the early Iron Man suit from the comics, like from the 1960s Avengers comic books. It kind of was this big bulky suit like that, and that's what it made me think of. And I don't know, maybe that was a pre-existing suit that he added the Tesseract to, but I was like, how did he build that so quickly? And when I went back and I watched it a second time, I picked up on a line that I missed the first time where when they give Howard Stark the Tesseract, or Peggy gives him the Tesseract and says, I assume you know what to do with this. He's like, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this. And it occurred to me that was when he decided he was going to build the Iron Man suit. But I didn't pick up on that the first time.
All right. I got a question. I'm just curious if I missed something because I literally think I might have missed something. I only watched this episode once. So Howard Stark builds the Iron Man suit with the Tesseract. And then later in the episode, Red Skull has the Tesseract. How did that happen? How did he get the Tesseract?
He got it when he captured Steve.
Oh, when he captured, because the Tesseract was in the... Okay, all right.
Yeah, the Tesseract was in the suit. It actually took me a little bit to think that through. I'm like, wait, how did he get the Tesseract again? And I remember, because that's why he had to use that, whatever that thing was that the suit was in at the end. He was like, to charge the suit because the Tesseract wasn't there anymore.
Okay, I get it.
I don't know why they would give him a suit charger. Like, that was a little...
I think it was supposed to like reference the first Iron Man suit that Tony like walks out of that cave in, and that's like essentially they're using the Tesseract as an arc reactor.
Yeah.
It's the energy source, and so
Tony Stark was able to build us in a cave.
Darren says it reminds him of Ironmonger. I don't know what that is.
No, me neither.
You'll have to expand. So I wanted to talk about Red Skull because, aside from the guy who voiced him, I thought was great. And also Red Skull was sort of, I felt like more of a background character, but that's fine because it was a 25-minute episode and really didn't focus on Captain Carter. But what bugged me is this is the thing that I actually remember from the original What If comics as well, is we get the Watcher saying that's it, that's the moment, right? But I remember this in the comics too. Then other things change where there's no reason for them to change. So Red Skull's plan has completely changed, and he's trying to get this tentacle monster now, which was not at all what he did in the movie. And I don't understand why that would change just because Peggy Carter went downstairs. I don't. At first, I was like, well, maybe it's because he didn't have the Tesseract for a little while. He came up with a different plan, but he still needed the Tesseract to do this plan. So I didn't get that, and also thought it was a really bad plan that he hadn't thought through at all, because the monster comes and kills him instantly. So what was he planning to do? Like, did he think that he could control this creature somehow? This I didn't really suspend disbelief for like I did for the Iron Suit. This one bothered me. I don't know. What did you guys think of that? What do you think about that, Corey?
So as soon as I saw the tentacle monster, I immediately thought Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And the whole timeline, the whole story with Hive on the alien planet, and how Hydra predates Nazi World War II, and they actually like worshipped this alien tentacled monster who was supposed to be on another planet, and they were always trying to open up a portal, and they were sending sacrificial members of Hydra through the portal to appease the god on the other side. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, they're trying to bring Hive back, but they're doing it like in the 1940s instead of in 2009 when they did it in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It also made me think of the opening of Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's 2, when they're fighting that tentacle beast monster, and Drax jumps in and tries to cut it to bits.
Yeah, so, I thought of that too. Yeah.
So that was the only sort of way I figured it out. And with the whole Hydra Hive alien tentacled thing, they couldn't control it either, and it kind of came and bit them. When they weren't expecting. So also Red Skull's just like a little bit unhinged. So.
I don't know. Like, I thought it was pretty weird that he changed his plan so drastically too. I think that did throw me off when I first watched the episodes. Like, okay, so why is he going for this tentacle monster thing now? But I remember watching a YouTube video that posited, like, here's the reason why that changed, because this happened earlier on. This caused Red Skull to change his plans, but I can't remember what the fuck they said. But I remember it making sense to me. Like, okay, I can see that. But I can't remember what it was. But something apparently that happened early in the episode changed it, because the whole thing with the Walder Frey originally played, the actor played the dude, the creepy dude that the Red Skull killed at the very start of, and apparently those events went down differently in and it had something to do with that, but I can't remember. But I don't know. Yeah, it didn't bother me as much, but it did throw me off a bit. I was like, wait, what? And that's another thing I kind of did just go with. I was like, okay, they're going to do this tentacle monster thing instead. Whatever.
But what gets me is that it kills him instantly. Like, what was his plan?
That was funny.
What was he planning to do? Like, that's what I have a hard time understanding.
No, that's fair. That's
totally fair. Supposed to be the champion of Hydra, but it's just going to take over the whole world and eat everything.
Did
he just,
Oh, go ahead.
Did he just assume that because it has tentacles that it would it would be in favor of Hydra, and I don't
Maybe I think so. I don't. It does make him a much more incompetent character. It makes him a lot more silly than just just killed.
So Darren says because Carter caught the Tesseract in Zoloft, Red Skull could only research from the art info from the church. She learned of the portal from the creature there. That does make sense.
I think that's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't understand what he was planning to do when he gets killed instantly.
But I did hear that
it was funny.
Yes, it was. But again, it's a bit more. It makes it a bit more cartoonish. But he's not a very effective villain. But as you said before, it's like this is only a half-hour episode. It doesn't have to be this huge deal. But I did hear that this tentacle monster thingy was going to appear again in some of these live-action MCU movies.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk that this is Shumagora, which is from the comics, and had already, before this had aired, had already been rumored to be the big bad in Multiverse of Madness. But if that is the case, then there must be different versions of it, because it looks like Peggy chopped the crap out of this thing. Or maybe it's still alive and it just regrew its tentacles somewhere off in some other
I
world.
think it could be, like, since this is a different universe, where I think it could be a different version of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
or it could
kinda
be
like we're going to get a different version of Kang than the one we saw.
Yeah, very true. I'm just thinking in the end when she comes through the portal with Nick Fury, you see these tentacles fall down. So it's clear that she, like, no time has passed for her. That it's just a few seconds later, if anything. And but the tentacles are all chopped up. But it's possible, yes, that is a different version of it, or that she chopped off some tentacles, but the thing is perfectly fine and it'll grow its tentacles back and it's still alive. So those are both possibilities.
It reminded me a lot of the big evil monster AI thing from the end of Picard season 1.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. It also comes through a portal.
And Brandon mentioned it's very Cabin in the Woods. Monster tentacles.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I haven't either, but thanks.
The Cabin in the Woods. Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one either. Yeah, I know it reminded me of something. Thanks for bringing that up, Mark. The creature from Picard coming to. I feel like I was like, there was another tentacle creature coming through a portal. What was that? You are correct there. And one of the videos that I saw was joking around that, because there's the rumors, as I mentioned, that Peggy Carter might appear in Multiverse of Madness, that we just might see her flying through the multiverse, fighting this thing like Gandalf fighting the Balrog, just flying through the air, go, oh! We'll just see her fly by every once in a while, battling the tentacle creature.
I will say this: if the Captain Carter we get in the Doctor Multiverse movie, the Doctor Strange Multiverse movie, is a 20-second cameo, I will be disappointed. That's
I would not get your hopes up. I feel like that we will see her in What If.
A 20-second cameo?
Yeah, we will see her in What If, and we may see her more so in the main MCU in the future, but I would be surprised if we get more than a little cameo in Multiverse of Madness, to be honest. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
What I did like is that she's different from Steve in that her weapons are, she takes a sword and a shield. And so to me, I'm like, oh my word, that's so British. She's basically a knight. She's got a sword and a shield, and she's going off to like fight this evil dragon. It's like St. George and the Dragon. Except it's Captain Carter and the tentacle monster.
I loved that she had the shield, or the sword to go with the shield. I think that was great.
Yeah.
Okay, I've gone through the things that I wanted to talk about. Was there anything else that we missed that you guys wanted to kick back around and touch on?
The planes that were in the dogfight battle that we saw were a Messerschmitt and a Spitfire, which you can see behind me.
Yeah, I can kind of see it. It's hard to, because of just the bottom of it. Yeah.
There you go. There's the Spitfire.
Oh, okay, cool.
very, very lovely. And then the bomber was the Hanekel, I think. Hanekel or Hanekyle. I brought in expert aviation people on this.
Yeah,
I tapped
that was
my
completely
friends.
out of my my expertise.
But that was pretty cool. And what else? I love where she goes to interrogate Aramzola. And he's like, I shall tell you nothing. And the next thing he's like, he told me everything. So this is a, you know, and it's just a reference of just a callback to Agent Carter, where she just takes people in for interrogation and they tell her everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen First Avenger, so I was wondering if that was referencing if something similar to that happened.
It seemed familiar to me, and I haven't seen Agent Carter, so I think it might have been referencing something in the MCU as well, but I just can't remember what it might be.
I love the reference to Hedy Lamarr, because again, there's a whole bunch of scenes with Agent Carter where Howard is just getting in a lot of trouble with a lot of different women, and he's always dating all these different women, and they're famous, and so that was kind of funny. He says, I spent a lovely weekend with her, but she wasn't teaching me German. And everything on the machine is in German. So that just made me chuckle because it was very Howard.
And not having seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or I'm sorry, Agent Carter, and not, having seen like Howard Stark's role in that show, I enjoyed Howard Stark here because I feel like he played much more of a role than he did in the film that this is based off of, the First Avenger. So, yeah, I'm with Mark. I kind of want to go watch some Agent Carter now. It's on Disney Plus, I think. It's on one of the streaming services.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, maybe I'll put that on my list of shows.
Just
to
a
binge.
matter of finding the time.
Yeah.
There were two other points. One is that Peggy knocks the Nazi off the motorcycle and steals it from him, whereas in Steve's storyline, he's like given the motorcycle. And, uses it with his group. And I love that, Bucky says, "Who are you supposed to be, the Queen of England?" Which is kind of a callback for an Agent Carter. The team wants to give her a nickname, and they're like, "We can call you Miss U, like Miss UK or Miss," and she's like, "Don't ever say that again." Like, she doesn't like the nicknames at all. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, one of the videos I saw pointed out that there actually wasn't a Queen of England in 1945. Queen Elizabeth was crowned in 1953 or something, and there wasn't actually a Queen of England. Well, whatever. That's
There was a King of England.
Yeah.
His wife, and Elizabeth and Margaret were little girls at the time.
I mean,
so.
there's been, I think I saw the same video or a similar one, but I was thinking, well, there's been Queen of England's before that, like Queen of England's still a thing.
Yeah. Although that's actually, I just realized, a callback to the Captain America movie when all the guys are lined up and she calls them to attention, and he's like, "What are you like, Miss Queen of England or something? Are we going to wrestle?" The guy that gives her lip, and then she punches him right in the face. So that's kind of a callback there, right?
I think it was something similar. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. He's like, "Who are you, Queen Victoria?" I thought I was signing up for the U.S. Army.
That's right. Yeah, it was something similar.
So we see that. And I love the shocked looks on their faces. And Dum Dum Dugan's like, "What kind of a woman Dane fights like that?" And she, throws all the guys around, and he just looks at her and goes, "Okay, I guess they do now."
Yeah.
Not making her upset. So that was hilarious. I love that, how they just kind of adopted her immediately. They're like, "We'll follow you. Yep, lead the way."
But yeah, no, it's interesting when you mentioned before how you're curious about like what happened to Steve. Rogers after she went through the portal and she went back and ended up with Nick Fury. When I saw that, I kind of just, my brain just went to assume, it's like, oh, so she's gonna like be in this version of Endgame and she's gonna end up traveling back and to be with Steve Rogers, and then she'll appear as an old lady and hand the shield to someone else.
Maybe.
Yeah. Who will
Black Widow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. She's going to hand the shield to Black Widow instead. Who will not have died. It will be Hawkeye will have died or something like that.
Like, that's a question I don't need the answer to.
Yeah.
Maybe she's gonna make out with Steve Rogers' nephew as well.
No, she'd be smarter than that. She'd be smarter than that.
Yeah, that Steve Rogers' nephew is going to be the power broker. And we could go. No, I think that they're going to deviate a lot more than that.
Well, and the cube is left too in that scene. Like, they're left with the power, the cube. So what do they do with that? And that is that the Space Stone, if I remember correctly? The blue Tesseract.
Tesseract are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's a Space Stone. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I don't have all the stones memorized.
Yeah. Yeah, it was also pointed out on one of the videos that I watched that the Watcher's spiel at the beginning of the episode, and he's like, time, space. He's like basically lists. I got caught up in it and was thinking it was like the introduction to Star Trek, and I thought he was going to go space, the final frontier. But what he's actually doing is listing off a lot of the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, time is a prism of infinite possibilities. Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that the 9th episode was listed as Ultron Vision, Infinity Stones, and the multiverse, or the Guardians of the Multiverse. So that sounds pretty crazy. So the Infinity Stones are going to play a role. All right.
I think it would be. Yeah, I was just going to say.
No, go ahead.
It would be really interesting if, like, this whole season of What If is kind of like this phase 1 of the MCU, where they had, each episode they introduce characters, and then they have the final finale is like the Avengers, where they bring them all together.
That kind of seems like they might be going in that direction.
That would be cool.
I won't be disappointed if they don't do that, but it'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool. I was thinking about this, though. The thing that makes me sad is that one of those people is the T'Challa Star-Lord, who was voiced by Chadwick Boseman before he passed, and now he wouldn't be able to be anymore. So I wonder if they were planning on bringing that character back, would they? Because I know in the films they have said they're definitely not recasting Chadwick Boseman, but I wonder if if they had plans for that character moving forward in What if they would recast the voice actor. So.
I mean, I would assume in an animated feature, voice actors switch all the time.
Yeah.
And we know that, like, Steve wasn't voiced by Chris Evans. We know Red Skull wasn't voiced by Hugo Weaving, and a few others. So it's possible they could go with a sound-alike or another voice actor.
Yeah, I don't think people would be as upset, like, if they recast the voice actor, but if they recast in the live action, then
that's all right. So I want to wrap up here. We're been going a little more than an hour, and that's about good. So, any last final thoughts that either of you want to throw in there? Mark, did you have anything else you want to close off with?
About the episode? No, I think we've about covered everything. Just really excited for the rest of the season.
Any final thoughts, Corrie?
Peggy gets the line, "Maybe you haven't found the right partner," in this episode. So they swapped that. And now I have to get a new t-shirt because this won't work anymore, because now it's not Agent Carter, it's Captain Carter. So thanks.
Yeah. Well, you can have both. You can get
they
both
can
of
both
them.
exist.
Alternate.
Man.
Yeah.
No, I think that's it. It was fun. And in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there is an episode called What If? And I think I mentioned this before we went live. And it's basically when the team gets sucked into a virtual reality where Hydra has won the war and they're in control of everything. And one of the characters, I don't want to give it away, who betrays them in real life in this episode in the virtual world is actually secretly an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. working with Hydra, but he's a double agent and he ends up helping them. And so I thought it was so neat that episode was called What If, because it's basically doing what this episode, this whole season is doing, and what the comics did of what would happen if this character who originally was trained under Hydra actually has someone train him who's good and with S.H.I.E.L.D. Who does he become and how is he different? And so we had that, a couple of years ago. So that was really neat to find.
Yeah, and I can imagine that they probably named that episode "What If" because of the comic book series.
Yes, yeah. But that was kind of cool. So, yeah.
Rob says that there are already Captain Carter T-shirts for sale. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they were on sale before that episode even aired. I am certain of it.
I will get on it.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up. We're going to be back here. Mark and I will be back here next week. Darren, who's in the chat today, will be joining us, and we're going to talk about T'Challa becoming Star-Lord and the Guardians of the Galaxy. I know that Mark doesn't like what if that person becomes that person, but we do. We do get one more of those.
I like the thought, though, that they said that this episode is going to deviate more than this source material than this first episode did. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. So Darren will be here with us for that next week. So if you're finding us for the first time, please subscribe to my channel, and then please check that out next week. Mark, you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, cool. So my name is Mark. I have a channel called Enchantment of Eternity. At the moment, I am covering Star Trek Lower Decks, which is also airing another cartoon. A lot of good cartoons airing at the moment. And and also doing retro reviews. I'm watching another cartoon, Star Wars Clone Wars, for the first time. And going through, did my review for season 1, and I'm going to go through every season once a month. And just doing other videos on the Expanse, Star Trek, and other crazy stuff. And of course, I shall be here, as Alyssa said, every week to talk about What If, which I'm so excited for. So yeah, you can find me over on Enchantment of Eternity.
Yeah, Mark, for me, this is oddly the year of the animated show. I'm keeping track of my, all the shows that I watch so that I can do a top 10 at the end of the year. And there's a lot of animated shows. And this week it's the only week all year where there were 4 shows on simultaneously that I was watching because What If and Lower Decks premiered, and the same week was the last week of Star Wars Bad Batch. And then I also watched Rick and Morty, and I'm watching 4 shows, and they are all animated. This is so weird because I don't think of myself as an animated show person, but I'm watching all of these animated shows for some reason.
And Prodigy's coming out later this year, too.
Yeah. A lot of animation. Anyways, Corrie, would you like to tell people how they can find you and what you're up to?
Yes. Oh, you can find me on YouTube, obviously, with Alyssa for some of her shows. I'm with Darren on a lot of his shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, all of the Disney Plus TV shows. And then I did a few reviews with Rob and Smirking Gun Reviews, so you can search for me there. I'm an author and I write, and so you can find me on my author website, which is Literature with Charm, or on Facebook with my name. CL is an initial, Shoemaker. And then if you search for @Biblical Bliss, that's my YouTube channel, and that shows up too. So lots of places to search for me. And cool. Thanks for everybody being in the chat and hanging out. And thanks, Alyssa, for having me.
Yep. Yeah, let me, before I say my goodbyes, let me give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Rob and Darren, both of whom will be joining us the next 2 weeks. Darren next week and Rob the week after. But thank you for joining us in the chat. We got Brandon Howells, our old friend, formerly known as Cardinal Doomsday. Thank you for joining us. And Deborah, thank you for joining us in the chat. We appreciate you guys making the chat lively. As of today, this is the 8th day that my channel has existed, so I wasn't sure how many people we could get in the chat. So I really appreciate you guys joining us and making it a lively chat. So speaking of that, yeah, I have a brand new channel, Alyssa Jeans Reviews, that you are watching right now. I have lots of content. I've immediately dropped tons of content on which you should check out. I've got reviews of all of the Marvel Phase 4 stuff, so all 4 of the Marvel projects from Phase 4 prior to this, I have reviews for. I've got Star Trek stuff. I've got original series, least and most favorite episode list. I have Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine is coming out next week. And I will be reviewing Lower Decks weekly. And Mark and I actually are going to be doing a joint review next week because Mark's going to be out here visiting me on the West Coast, and we're going to do a joint review for Star Trek Lower Decks, which should be fun. So I'm doing weekly reviews for Lower Decks. I also just this morning dropped my Season 1 review for Star Wars The Bad Batch. And the first few minutes of that are spoiler-free. If you haven't seen the show, you can watch the first few minutes of it. So please check it all out, subscribe, and I hope to see you all back here next week. Goodbye. See you later.
Bye.